Hey, what's up and how's it going, everyone? Well, I'm so glad that you have took your time to spend with me right here today on the MRB Wrestling Review Show. I'm your co-host, Mike McRock Wilson, and NXT from the Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida took place last night, and the show kicked off when Antonio Cesaro went one-on-one with Leo Kruger, and I thought that these two guys really meshed well with each other. I thought those two put on a great match last night. It was probably the best match that happened on NXT as well. And a couple of things that the announcers mentioned about Antonio Cesaro. They mentioned about Dolph Ziggler. That he said that he is a better wrestler than he is. I like how the announcers made Antonio Cesaro look great, as well as Leo Kruger as well. So, it's a win-win situation for both guys to be in this match and for the commentators to really get those guys over, even though Antonio Cesaro won this match. And another thing that they mentioned is that having him as the NXT Championship or being in line as a contender would be a major step back for Cesaro, because he is already a guy you see on Raw and SmackDown, elevating himself up to the ladder on Raw and SmackDown. So with that being said, I think that Antonio Cesaro should only be used on NXT when it's necessary. Like his match with Leo Kruger, I thought it made sense because we saw those two guys go at it when the NXT champion was in the ring trying to fight for the right to face the champion, and I like that. It made sense that just to have those two guys go in the ring and just fight was just excellent. And even though it's two heels going at it, you could tell the way the audience was going for that match, and I think they really play it by ear, because what happened was Antonio Cesaro won the match, and it seems like the fans on NXT really understand and get that Antonio Cesaro is a great wrestler, and they actually approve and acknowledge that as well. And so taking that into account, the crowd on NXT is much different than you see on Raw and SmackDown, because they cheer for the good guys, boo for the bad guys, and boo for me, as a DJ would say. And okay, now I'm just going off topic here. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. So with all that being said, Leo Kruger and Antonio Cesaro last night, that was the greatest match that happened on NXT, and it was a solid, very solid beginning and match, as well as the ending as well, which I will get to later on. 50-50 split on it, but like I said, I will get right down to it. Also, we saw Charlotte go one-on-one with Santana Garrett. I think that is her name, and this was only a short match, for Charlotte to go over a worker, a jobber for NXT, for Charlotte to go over. And you see Summer Rae and Sasha Banks come out and act like the Mean Girls. They're like the new version of Lay Cool, Michelle McCool, and Layla, only it's on NXT, and it's all well and good. It's just that I would rather see them come out after the match and not before it, because there seems to be something going on with Charlotte and the diva that came out with her, Bailey. So I think that they should leave the stories just a little bit separate. I think just the timing of that was a little off. I would rather see Sasha Banks and Summer Rae come out after the match, maybe just a little bit of eye contact, but nothing further. And when they came out, they addressed Paige, said that we took her out, there's no chance she's coming back. What happens? Paige comes back and tries to take him on 2-on-1, but then Emma comes out and evens the odds. And I like this foreshadowing of a tag team match, as well as the women's championship on NXT overall, because you see these other contenders and the possibilities are endless. Paige versus Emma, Paige versus Summer Rae, Paige versus Sasha Banks, a triple threat #1 contenders, the fatal 4-way. Who knows what's going to happen on NXT with the women's division, but all I got to say about the women's division on NXT is that it's much more believable and better and respectful than it is on Raw and SmackDown. And all I got to say is keep it up, NXT. Keep it up. Do what you do with the NXT division on NXT. It's absolutely incredible what they do on that show. Also, we saw the debut of Mojo Rawley taking on Danny Burch, and I felt like, even though this was only a very short match, Mojo actually made the most out of his debut. He's a very energetic guy. He looks good in the ring. The only thing I'm nitpicking about Mojo is that leave the rear view move to Naomi, please. That just looked weird, but everything else Mojo Rawley was doing in the ring was actually pretty good. And I see some potential with this new Mojo Rawley character. I hope they build this guy right, and we'll see what happens going forth in his career on NXT. Also, we saw a tag team match between Enzo Amore and Colin Cassidy taking on Alexander Rusev and Scott Dawson. And I thought, the end result was actually pretty good. I like how Alexander and Scott Dawson really made their statement, standing out from the rest of the tag teams besides the tag team champions, the Ascension. And even though I don't buy into the idea of Alexander and Scott Dawson being in line to face the Ascension for the tag team titles, I like how they made their statement to Enzo and Colin Cassidy after they won the match. They took Enzo out. Then after the match, they took Colin Cassidy out. So, they look great. And the other only little thing I'm nitpicking on is that I would rather like to see Sylvester Lefort manage these two guys separately instead of as a tag team. Kind of like when with Paul Heyman managing both Curtis Axel and Ryback. Even though you see those two guys together, they compete in separate matches. So I would rather see that with Alexander Rusev and Scott Dawson with their manager Sylvester Lefort. And that's the only thing that I have a little bit of an issue with. But other than that, they look great on NXT, as well as Enzo Amore. I feel like when Enzo Amore loses, even though he comes off as a very annoying character, you always kind of feel sorry for the guy after he loses a match. So that's a little interesting. That's a nice little interesting layer they put on his character. So with that being said, I would also like to see maybe some sort of split between Enzo and Cassidy at some point. I think it will happen maybe sooner rather than later. And Enzo Amore, I'm on board with this guy more than almost anyone on any roster in the WWE. And I feel like, this guy can really, start to get that push now. And probably move away from Colin Cassidy and have him come out just by himself and be this unstoppable force, because you could tell he's a very tall guy and a big guy, and I think the NXT should use him the right way instead of putting him in a tag team, and I think it's about that time they kind of do that right now. And the main event on NXT was Aiden English taking down Rob Van Dam. And I'm 50-50 split on this. I think it was just a little too soon for Aiden English to face a guy like Rob Van Dam. Even though he's a top-tier guy, you see how Raw and SmackDown. So with that being said, I think that Aiden English really should be facing guys more to benefit him to go over. Just to face other jobbers and help slowly build up his new Broadway-like character, which I absolutely on board with. And his singing is just incredible. Oh man, this guy has lots of potential. Even though Mojo Rawley did debut, I do see potential in him. But Aiden English, this is a guy right now I'm really on board with going forth on NXT. I could see him possibly, being put in a rivalry with Sami Zayn somewhere down the line for the NXT Championship. And with that said, I thought that, yeah, it was a little too soon for him to face Rob Van Dam. But see, here's the thing about that. Rob Van Dam, even though he won the match, Aiden English could actually benefit from this loss because it's not like he's facing a top NXT superstar and losing. That would lose his momentum. So he really didn't lose any momentum losing to Rob Van Dam just for the fact that Rob Van Dam is a top WWE superstar. So I think that this was really Aiden English's show. Even though he lost, he looked good losing to Rob Van Dam. And with Rob Van Dam on NXT, I think Rob Van Dam looked phenomenal on that show. He looked great. The ECW chants work. It's kind of like almost an ECW vibe in that arena in the Full Sail University. Even though I never really been there, you kind of get that vibe watching it on TV. And there you have it. That was my review of last night's episode of NXT. And before I go, next week, Bo Dallas and Sami Zayn will face each other for the NXT Championship. We saw a backstage interview with them with Renee Young, hyping up their match for next week. I think what may happen is that Bo Dallas will somehow get a cheap victory over Sami Zayn and the rivalry continues between the two of them. That's what I think will probably happen. So with that being said, that was my review of last night's NXT. For the MRB Wrestling Review Show, I'm your co-host, Mike McRock Wilson. Get plenty of rest and always do your best.